Again, thanks everyone. I'm going to share my screen. We have a brief PowerPoint to run through this evening. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers.
El superintendente va a presentar una conversación, una presentación digo, y luego después vamos a tener tiempo para preguntas.
So again, welcome to our virtual town hall meeting this evening on Wednesday the 10th, 2021. We want to review with you some of the highlights of the recommendation to the District 104 School Board related to hybrid learning.
Bienvenidos a la presentación de la reapertura de escuelas para el Distrito 104.
So as you know, being part of our District 104 family, we've been remote learning since the very beginning of the school year back in August. And again, thanks to your hard work and partnership and the hard work of our teachers, we've had a very successful remote learning experience thus far. We do realize, however, that there is a social emotional component that students are needing, and there will be a time when we need to return to in-person learning when it's safe to do so. So.
Sorry, can you advance the slide? The next one is Spanish. Como ustedes saben, el Distrito 104 ha estado ofreciendo instrucción de forma remoto desde el comienzo del año escolar, pero ya nos damos cuenta que hay un componente de emocional y social para nuestros estudiantes, entonces tenemos que considerar cuándo es apropiado regresar a las escuelas en persona para los estudiantes. Troy, if you want to, you could make me a co-host, then I can kind of navigate. There's a couple people who are still unmuted, and I'd be able to mute them. You might have to stop share and then make me a co-host.
Yeah, I think I will. Give me just a second to stop the share. All right. Do you have the
Not yet. If you hover over me on the participant side, you can click that more button, and then you can make me a co-host. Conversely, you're also able to mute. There's two people who have their mic. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
All right. Thank you, John.
Yep, you bet.
All right. Now that we've solved our technical difficulties, let's get back to our screen share. So on Monday, February 1st, the board meeting met and I presented a hybrid learning plan at that time that included 5 recommendations that came forth from a committee. The committee was made up of teachers representing leadership, building leadership positions within each building, parents, a board member, and a couple of building administrators.
El día lunes, 1 de febrero, el superintendente presentó un plan de aprendizaje híbrido a la mesa directiva. Y pues un comité de diferentes personal del distrito, administradores, maestros, liderazgo de las escuelas y junto con unos padres de la comunidad presentó 5 recomendaciones a la Junta, a la mesa directiva del distrito para reabrir las escuelas.
So the first recommendation, that is the most critical of all 5 recommendations, was that the hybrid learning option be considered when both the following criteria are met. The first, that 2 consecutive weeks with the community positivity rate, meaning the Summit Bedford Park, Ridgeview Gardens area, at or below 8% using a 14-day rolling average as measured by northwestern.edu.
La primera recomendación que es la más importante es que se considere una opción de aprendizaje híbrido cuando se cumplan con los dos criterios siguientes. La primera es esa, que tenemos 2 semanas consecutivas de un promedio por debajo de 8% según la medida de Northwestern EDU.
This number has fluctuated wildly in the last several months, often in double digits, as high as the high teens into the 20s. It has recently dipped as the numbers have across the state to below 8%, but as of today, as of 2/10, it is currently sitting at 8.07%.
Hemos visto una fluctuación en este número durante las últimas semanas. Ahora está por encima de 8%. Hemos tenido algunos días bajo de 8%, pero lo estamos monitoreando. Dr. Whalen, we're receiving some notifications that we have reached the limit on the number of participants at 300. And there are a number of parents who would like to join, but are unable to. So I'm not sure if there's something we can do about that right now.
So unfortunately, we've just checked with IT, and there's nothing that can be done at this point. We are recording this, so we'll have to invite them to watch the recording. Thank you for sharing that. The second part of the first recommendation is having adequate licensed teachers available in the pre-K through 5th grade level. This is a plan that phases in instruction, starting with our younger learners first for hybrid learning. And in order to facilitate the schedule that we've put together, we would need 53 teachers on site. We do have teachers that have childcare concerns because their own children are remote learning. Some are living with health conditions, so not all teachers will be able to return even if the amount falls below 8%.
La segunda parte de esa primera recomendación es que tenemos maestros suficientes para servir a los estudiantes, y ese número es 53 maestros, porque estamos fijando en los grados primarios primero, entre pre-kinder hasta 5º grado, y eso se ocupa a 53 maestros. Seguramente tenemos suficiente en nuestro personal, pero algunos de estos maestros también tienen pues diferentes circunstancias debido a salud, puede ser, o debido a sus propios hijos. Entonces estamos ahora investigando si vamos a tener lo suficiente para abrir las escuelas.
John, let me interrupt for just a second. It has been suggested that perhaps some staff members that are familiar with this presentation from Monday might leave the meeting so that they can open up spaces for parents. So that's certainly an option if they would like to do that.
Okay. Bye.
The second recommendation is that the hybrid learning option that's being offered include the student schedules that we're going to share with you later in this presentation.
La segunda recomendación incluye un horario de los estudiantes que vamos a repasar durante esta presentación más tarde.
The third recommendation is that as criteria in recommendation number 1, being the 14-day rolling average and adequate staff being available, that we reach out to parents and survey them regarding the demand for both attendance options, whether it be hybrid learning or remote learning.
La tercera recomendación es que hacemos una encuesta en el momento en que está al alcance estos dos primeros requisitos, que eso de el promedio de la tasa de positividad bajo de 8% y si tenemos lo suficiente personal. Y esta encuesta para los padres sería para determinar cuántos estudiantes van a querer, cuántos padres van a querer mandar sus hijos a la escuela en persona.
The fourth recommendation is that a staff survey be sent periodically to determine when there will be adequate staffing to offer the hybrid learning option. So we will be sampling surveying staff periodically within every couple of weeks to find out if their status has changed and they can return to working on site.
La cuarta recomendación es que se envíe una encuesta al personal para ver cuántos de ellos están disponibles para regresar a la escuela en persona. Y eso vamos a empezar a hacer con frecuencia, quizá semanal o por lo menos cada 2 semanas para tener pues actualización acerca de la disponibilidad de los estudiantes, o sea, de los maestros, perdón.
The final and fifth recommendation is that the hybrid learning option be phased in, beginning with our youngest learners first, pre-K through 5, with on-site remote learning support for our 6th to 8th grade students that would continue in remote. So for students that are having difficulty attending on a regular basis, we will be setting up areas in the building so that they can attend remotely until such time as we would have a middle school hybrid schedule worked out.
Y la quinta recomendación es que empezamos en traer para atrás los estudiantes en los grados primarios primero. Y con apoyo en nuestras escuelas para los estudiantes en 6º, 7º, 8º grado que tiene reto o tiene problemas en conectarse, vamos a proporcionar un lugar aquí en el edificio para que puedan venir acá para conectar al aprendizaje remoto.
There were several considerations we had to take into account when designing the schedules that we're going to be sharing with you. The first and most important one is to create the least amount of disruption in our pre-K through 5th grade homeroom assignments as possible.
Había bastantes consideraciones en el diseño del horario híbrido. La primera era para crear la menor disrupción, interrupción posible a los salones de los estudiantes en los grados de pre-kinder hasta 5º.
The goal being that students, whether they elect hybrid learning or remote learning, would stay with their current teacher.
Y la idea aquí es a pesar de qué forma quieren continuar con el aprendizaje, los estudiantes no tendrán que cambiar de maestro o de salón.
The second was to limit the risk of student and staff exposure to the virus by not serving meals on site. So the schedule was designed to allow students to take a lunch and a breakfast home with them at the end of their 3-hour in-person session.
La segunda consideración en el diseño del horario era hacerlo para que los estudiantes no tuvieran que comer aquí en la escuela, para mandar a casa las comidas que normalmente serviría aquí en la escuela.
Additionally, we want to allow the afternoon remote learning schedule to stay intact so that students who elect to learn remotely will not see a change in their schedule.
Es más, queríamos permitir que los estudiantes en el horario de aprendizaje remoto de la tarde, los que asisten sus clases en la tarde, no tiene que cambiar su horario. Eso permanezca, sería inalterado o no había cambios.
And finally, to allow a quick return to 100% remote learning if we're in an environment which requires us to do so.
Y finalmente, permitir un retorno rápido a un modo de aprendizaje remoto si es necesario en el futuro.
The Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines indicate that anytime the positivity rate for community is over 8%, a district should be conducting all instruction remotely.
Y las pautas de el Departamento de Salud de Illinois es si la tasa de positividad aumenta por encima de 8%, que el distrito debe regresar al aprendizaje remoto inmediatamente.
So to give you a slight overview, the school day will be 5.5 hours in length, slightly longer than it is currently under remote, to allow for student transition time that are for those students who are coming into schools in person. And that's divided into 2 learning sessions, 3 hours in the morning and 2.5 hours in the afternoon.
Y para darles un poquito de información acerca del horario, el día entero sería de 5 horas y media, que es un poquito más largo que el día que tenemos ahora. Y ese día estaría dividida en 2 partes. Una parte en persona de 3 horas en la mañana y una parte de 2 horas y media en la tarde.
Students will participate in on-site instruction 2 or 5 days per week for 3 hours a day, depending upon parental response and interest in the hybrid learning program.
Los estudiantes participarán en instrucción en persona aquí en la escuela por 5 días o 2 días. Eso depende de las respuestas de los padres.
Students will participate in remote instruction 5 days per week for 2.5 hours, just as they're doing now. And during that time, they will have their specials activities such as PE, art, music, STEAM, and any supportive services they may be receiving.
Los estudiantes tendrán 5 días de instrucción remota en las tardes por 2 horas y media, y eso puede incluir sus especiales: educación física, arte, STEAM, música.
While on school grounds, all students will need to comply with all of the Illinois Department of Public Health and CDC guidelines. That includes mask wearing, social distancing, frequent hand washing, etc.
Mientras que están aquí en la escuela, los estudiantes tienen que cumplir con todas las pautas del Departamento de Salud Pública de Illinois. Eso quiere decir que tienen que llevar mascarilla, observar distanciamiento social, lavado de manos frecuentes, etc.
Our students in the pre-K through 5 section will continue to use Seesaw, the Seesaw learning management software that they've been using since the very beginning of the fall, to communicate with their classroom teacher.
Los estudiantes van a seguir usando la plataforma de aprendizaje remoto Seesaw, el mismo sistema que hemos usado desde el principio del año.
A take-home lunch will be sent as well as a breakfast with each student. So it'll be that day's lunch and the next day's breakfast when they dismiss at the end of their 3-hour day. This will be a grab-and-go sack lunch and breakfast.
Al salir de la escuela, cada día se le proporcionará a los estudiantes un almuerzo de ese día y el desayuno para llevar para el día siguiente.
I'd like to take a moment just to remind families that we are still following the guidelines of the Illinois Department of Public Health and CDC related to health and safety measures.
Vamos a recordar a todos los padres que tenemos que seguir con las medidas de seguridad y salud que están recomendadas por el Departamento de Salud Pública.
The first is social distancing practices. Students will be required to stay 6 feet apart, social distance, at all times while on school campus.
La primera es las prácticas de distanciamiento social. Los estudiantes van a tener que mantener una distancia de 6 pies a todo tiempo mientras están aquí en la escuela.
We have markers on the floor in the hallway to help students identify the 6 feet of distance and to help adults guide those students to stay 6 feet apart when they're walking in the hallway.
En los pasillos tenemos calcomanías en el piso para guiar a los estudiantes y también el personal para mantener su distancia de 6 pies entre estudiantes.
We also have reduced our classroom capacity by removing desks from classrooms. Our current classroom capacity is between 11 and 13 students per classroom.
También hemos reducido la capacidad de todos los salones para mantener la cantidad de estudiantes seguros para mantener el espacio entre ellos.
The next item refers to face coverings. Illinois Department of Public Health and the CDC require that students and staff wear face coverings anytime they're on school property. The face covering needs to cover the mouth and the nose.
Y la siguiente cosa es todos los estudiantes y personal tienen que llevar mascarillas faciales que cubre la boca y también la nariz.
Personal hygiene and health practices, we've installed hand sanitizing stations at the entrance of every classroom and office space.
La cosa siguiente, las prácticas de higiene y salud personal. Hemos instalado sanitizador de mano, desinfectante de mano al entrar a cada salón y cada oficina en el distrito.
Students will be required to use the hand sanitizer anytime they enter the classroom.
Los estudiantes van a tener que usar el desinfectante de manos cada vez que entran a cada salón.
Teachers and staff will also be reminding students to conduct good hygiene by washing their hands often and whenever possible.
También vamos a sugerir y guiar a los estudiantes a lavar las manos con mucha frecuencia durante el día.
Symptom and temperature screening. Each parent will be required to fill out a COVID-19 symptom certification form for each student that comes on campus for hybrid learning.
También vamos a estar fijando en la evaluación de síntomas y temperatura. Cada estudiante va a tener que hacer una autoevaluación de esas dos cosas cada día de asistencia.
We will provide parents with a notepad full of certification forms that can be filled out and sent to school with the student each day.
Vamos a proporcionar a cada familia un cuaderno de hojas y van a tener que presentar al entrar a la escuela todos los días cada estudiante autoevaluación.
Students who arrive at school without one of the certification forms will not be allowed to go to class until the parents are contacted and a symptom screener is completed.
Los estudiantes que llegan a la escuela sin esta hoja, esta evaluación, vamos a tener que comunicar con los padres y hacer una evaluación en la escuela.
Students will also receive a second temperature check when they arrive on campus, and only those without temperature or those with the temperature below 100.4 degrees will be allowed to go to class.
También vamos a hacer una segunda, vamos a tomar la temperatura de cada estudiante por segunda vez cuando entren a la escuela y solo los que tienen una temperatura abajo de 100.4 grados va a poder entrar en la escuela.
Students who may have a fever or develop symptoms during the school day will be asked to stay in an isolation or a care room under the supervision of a district staff member until a parent can be contacted to pick up that student for the day.
Los estudiantes que tienen síntomas o tienen fiebre, temperatura aquí en la escuela van a tener que estar aislados en un salón de cuidado bajo la supervisión de un personal de la escuela hasta que sus padres se pueden venir para recoger a ese estudiante.
Any student that is sent home with COVID-like symptoms will need to either secure a doctor's note or have a COVID test that returns negative before being allowed to come back on school grounds.
Cualquier estudiante que tiene síntomas de COVID o sea, si tiene una temperatura, van a tener que mantenerse en casa para un periodo o hasta que se puede presentar un examen, una evaluación COVID que tiene que es negativa.
And the final point that I need to make here is that Illinois, the state of Illinois does require that for any student who comes on campus, they must be in compliant with all immunization and health physical requirements for their grade level.
Y por fin, la otra cosa que es recomendación digo que se requiere por el Departamento de Salud es que todos los estudiantes que vengan a la escuela tienen actualizado sus vacunas y un examen físico.
Student attendance is the same as it has been. If a student is not feeling well or has COVID-19 symptoms, we would ask that you keep them at home. Call the building secretary before 8 o'clock, and they will ask a few questions about whether or not your student has been in contact with anyone that has exhibited COVID-19 symptoms or a person diagnosed with COVID-19.
En cuanto a la asistencia, es parecido al sistema o el proceso de antes. Si su hijo no se siente bien, está enfermo, esa mañana estamos pidiendo que los padres llamen a la escuela y la secretaria o quizá la enfermera le va a hacer algunas preguntas acerca de si tiene síntomas de COVID o si han tenido contacto cercano con alguien que tiene síntomas o alguien que tiene un diagnóstico de COVID.
At its board meeting on Monday, February 1st, the school board approved the purchase of ionization filters to be installed in every classroom unit ventilator.
Durante la junta de la mesa directiva, la última, la mesa aprobó una actualización al sistema de aire en los edificios, en los salones.
The system will improve air quality in every classroom and cycle fresh air through the classroom 9 times per hour, which is 4 times higher than recommended by the Department of Public Health.
El sistema nuevo va a mejorar la calidad de aire en cada salón y va a hacer un ciclo de nuevo aire en cada salón 9 veces a la hora, que es 4 veces más lo requerido por el Departamento de Salud.
Thanks to one of our teachers' connections, we are receiving a donation of desk shields, plexiglass desk shields, 1 for each student. Teachers and students may elect to use those when they're on site.
Gracias a una colaboración de una de nuestras maestras, hemos conseguido divisores de escritorio para cada estudiante y los maestros pueden usar si es necesario dentro de cada salón.
I wanted to share a few photos of our current buildings as it exists today and what students will experience. So we have, for safety, capped off all of our water fountain bubblers. Our bottle filling stations are still open and students will be allowed to bring refillable bottles to school.
Quisiéramos compartir algunas fotos de cómo están los pasillos y las escuelas. Las fuentes de agua están apagados, como pueden ver ahí, pero vamos a dejar que los estudiantes traigan a la escuela una botella que pueden llenar en nuestros fuentes de agua.
And there's a photo here also of the example of the circles that are on the floor that will direct traffic and help students stay 6 feet apart and allow the adults to help remind students to stay 6 feet apart.
Como pueden ver en la foto al lado derecha, podemos ver las calcomanías que están en el piso y eso otra vez es para que los niños puedan estar separados todo el tiempo de sus 6 pies entre ellos.
Our Buildings and Grounds Department will sanitize each classroom at the end of each workday so that it is clean and ready for the next day student arrival.
Cada noche después de que se vayan los niños, el personal de la escuela va a desinfectar cada salón y pueden ver aquí cómo va a funcionar este proceso.
In addition, there's a picture here that shows the hand sanitation station that's been installed outside each classroom doorway.
Es más, pueden ver aquí en el lado derecho que hay una instalación de desinfectante de mano aquí que tenemos afuera de cada salón y cada oficina.
Finally, this last photo illustrates the spacing in the classroom. We've removed all non-essential furniture and desks have been spaced 6 feet apart on all sides.
Como pueden ver aquí en estas dos fotos, hemos quitado los muebles no necesarios en cada salón y hemos dejado un espacio de 6 pies entre cada escritorio y todos los salones van a tener una capacidad reducida de estudiantes.
I'd like to transition now and talk a little bit about the schedule itself. This is the hybrid pre-kindergarten schedule. You'll notice here that students are in session from 8:10 until 10:40. There'll be deep cleaning between 10:40 and 12 p.m. And then the second set of students will come in from 12 p.m. to 2:30.
Aquí queremos hacer una transición a ver los horarios en sí. Esto es un ejemplo del horario de pre-kinder, otra vez de pre-kinder. Vamos a tener 2 sesiones, una en la mañana de 2 horas y media y una en la tarde también de 2 horas y media. Entre estas 2 sesiones, el personal de la escuela va a conducir una limpieza profunda de todos los salones entre los grupos. Y como pueden ver, el miércoles no va a haber escuela porque todo van a ser limpiado.
Our daily hybrid kindergarten through 5th grade schedule. And again, I need to back up a moment and just say that there are 2 scenarios here. If, depending on parent turnout, if fewer than 50% of our student body elects to come back for hybrid learning, we believe we can offer daily hybrid learning. However, if more than 50% elect to return, we'll have to create an A-B alternating schedule, which we'll be sharing momentarily. This is an example. Let me stop there, John, so you can.
Thank you. Tenemos que avisar a ustedes que la forma del horario va a depender de cuántos estudiantes escogen regresar a la escuela. Como tenemos capacidad reducida en cada salón, si más que 50% de los estudiantes quieren regresar, entonces vamos a tener que tener un horario de A y B. Y eso quiere decir 2 días a la semana. Si menos que 50%, menos que la mitad de los estudiantes en pre-kinder, en kinder hasta quinto quieren regresar, vamos a pensar a poder ofrecer escuela en persona 5 días a la semana. Pero eso va a depender de la respuesta de ustedes, los padres.
So this is an example of a daily schedule in which hybrid learners would come in from 7:50 until 10:50 each morning. They would receive in-person instruction from their homeroom teacher each day during that time. They would go home, be dismissed at 10:50. They'd be given their grab and go lunch and the next day's breakfast.
Este es un ejemplo si tenemos escuela de 5 días, otra vez para repetir. Si menos que 50% de los estudiantes quieren regresar, vamos a seguir con este horario. La entrada es a las 7:50 y van a quedar con nosotros por 2 horas, por 3 horas, digo. Después de esas 3 horas, a las 10:50, es la salida. En ese momento los estudiantes van a llevar su almuerzo y el desayuno del día siguiente y van a terminar el día en casa de modo remoto.
At 12:20, the students would be required to log back in online from home, where they would receive their art, music, STEAM, or PE, or any push-in services that might be required, and they would complete their group self-directed online study, as they have been doing for half the day under remote learning.
Bajo este horario, a las 12:20, los estudiantes van a tener que conectarse otra vez a través de CISA o Zoom y terminar el día haciendo sus clases especiales, educación física, música, arte, y si tiene otro tipo de servicio se requiere, puede ser que los estudiantes van a guiarse a sí mismos como han estado haciendo todo este año.
As I stated, if the response rate from parents is greater than 50%, we will have to split our students into 2 groups, similar to Argo High School and other districts in the area. For the pre-K model, you can see here that Group A would come in person on Monday for 2 hours, while Group B would be remote learning. Monday, Tuesday, and then on Thursday, Friday, the 2 groups would switch, with Group B coming in for in-person learning and Group A receiving remote learning. On Wednesday, there would be all remote learning to allow for deep cleaning between the A group and the B group.
Y esto es el ejemplo del horario de pre-kinder, otra vez, de 2 días. Si tenemos suficiente o demasiados estudiantes, vamos a tener que dividir el día o los estudiantes en 2 grupos, el grupo A y el grupo B. Y se va a dividir de este modo. Debajo de este modelo, debajo de este horario, el grupo A va a tener su clase en persona los 2 días, lunes y martes, y el grupo B va a venir los jueves y los viernes. Otra vez el día miércoles es para limpiar todos los salones.
Our AB 2-day hybrid schedule for kindergarten through 5th grade gets a little more complicated, and so I'm going to spend a little more time on this schedule.
El horario de 2 días del grados kinder a quinto es un poquito más complejo, así que vamos a pasar un poquito más tiempo aquí.
We are sensitive to the fact that some of our Argo high school students may be providing some daycare for our younger learners. So this schedule better aligns with the Argo alphabetical A to L, M to Z split.
Dando cuenta de que algunos de ustedes tienen hermanos o hijos mayores que están en Argo, que están quizá cuidando a los hermanos más jóvenes, está como coordinado con el programa ahí en la secundaria.
Our Group A learners would be those students whose last name begin with an A through an L. And our Group B learners would be students whose last name begins with the letters M through Z. We will be mindful to try and keep siblings together if their last names differ.
Vamos a dividir otra vez los grupos en 2. Vamos a hacer la primera letra del apellido de los nombres de los estudiantes. El grupo A va a ser los que empieza con A hasta los que empieza con L. Y el grupo B empieza con el apellido que empieza con M y los que empieza con Z. Y vamos a darnos cuenta de las familias que quizá tienen apellidos con nombres diferentes. Vamos a poder acomodar estos.
In this model, in Group A, students A through L would be in-person learning from 7:50 to 10:50 on Monday and Tuesday, And then all remaining days of the week, they would be conducting their instruction through remote learning.
I'm sorry, Troy, would you mind repeating that?
Not at all. So the A group in this case, students whose last names begin with A through L would be receiving in-person, in-school instruction from their teacher. All other students would be engaged in remote learning.
Debajo de este modelo, el grupo A durante la mañana va a recibir su instrucción en persona de su maestra y todos los demás van a estar recibiendo instrucción remota.
On Thursday and Friday, the B group, made up of students whose last names begin M through Z, would receive in-person learning for 3 hours each day, and the rest of the time they would be in remote learning.
Y los jueves y viernes es lo contrario, o lo opuesto. Los estudiantes en el grupo B van a recibir su instrucción en persona en esos días y todos los demás estudiantes que he pedido que empieza con A y L va a estar en remoto.
It's important to note that in both the daily schedule and the hybrid schedule, that in some classrooms, the homeroom teacher will be present with the students. And in some classrooms, the homeroom teacher will be projecting in from a remote location and teaching with a co-teacher or an assistant in the classroom, helping students remain socially distanced and with any technology or homework questions they may have.
Es importante notar que en algunos casos la maestra de clase va a estar ahí en persona con los estudiantes y en otros casos la maestra puede ser enseñando de modo remoto, proyectando su lección en una pantalla. En estos casos vamos a tener otro maestro, una maestra de colaboración en el salón con los estudiantes.
The district will continue to offer its current remote learning option to all students.
El distrito va a seguir continuando a ofrecer el aprendizaje remoto, totalmente remoto, a todos los padres que quieren seguir así.
The only change that would occur with the implementation of hybrid learning is that all students would follow the afternoon schedule for remote learning, meaning that they would have their specials and self-guided study in the morning, and they would receive direct instruction from their homeroom teacher in the afternoons.
El único cambio para los estudiantes que eligen continuar con el aprendizaje remoto es que todos los estudiantes van a recibir su instrucción directa en la tarde y sus especiales y su instrucción sin una maestra en la mañana.
We have received a few questions that we wanted to answer in advance, and then of course we will answer all questions that were posted this evening. The first question is, upon entering the buildings, will students be completing a COVID screening checklist? And the answer to that is yes. In order to enter the building, students will have to have completed by their parents a COVID-19 symptom certification form. This will be turned in addition to having their temperature taken prior to accessing the classroom.
Hemos recibido algunas preguntas de antemano y quisiéramos proveer las respuestas a estas preguntas y seguramente vamos a tener tiempo al final si ustedes tengan preguntas adicionales. Esa primera pregunta es: al ingresar a las escuelas, y los estudiantes van a tener que completar una verificación de salud. Y la respuesta es que sí, los padres todos los días tienen que entregar con sus hijos una autoevaluación de síntomas y también de temperatura.
What personal protective equipment will be required or is required within the school setting? Again, following the Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines, everyone on school grounds will be required to have a mask that covers both their nose and their mouth at all times. While on the school property, teachers may take outdoor mask breaks, but anytime the school students are in the classroom, they are expected, and the adults as well, are expected to have masks that cover both the nose and the mouth.
¿Cuál es la segunda pregunta? Es ¿cuáles medidas de salud y seguridad se requiere dentro de la escuela? Y podemos decirles que todo el personal y los estudiantes tienen que llevar mascarilla que cubre la boca y la nariz en todo momento que están en la escuela.
Will class sizes remain smaller? That will depend very much on the parental response for the enrollment of hybrid learning. If a large number of parents elect hybrid learning, then remote classes sizes will increase, as we shared in the AB hybrid schedule.
La siguiente pregunta se toca al tamaño de los salones. Ahora tenemos salones de tamaño bastante pequeño y la pregunta es si va a seguir así. Eso dependerá de la respuesta de los padres acerca de si quieren mandar a sus hijos a la escuela en persona o si quieren mantenerse en el aprendizaje remoto. Si un gran número de padres eligen el aprendizaje híbrido, el tamaño de clases remotos aumentará. Esto se puede fijar en los horarios que hemos compartido antes.
When is the anticipated in-person learning start date or hybrid learning start date? The earliest possible return date per board directive is March 3rd, which is the start of our third trimester. It's really important to note, however, that that is contingent upon two very important criteria: the 14 rolling day average positivity rate for the community being below 8%, and also having adequate staffing. There may be an occasion where we will have to phase in certain grade levels before others if we do not have adequate staffing at all grade levels. If the positivity rate would spike above 8%, then we'll have to return to remote learning for that time period until it drops again below.
La siguiente pregunta es con la fecha de comienzo anticipada de aprendizaje híbrido o aprendizaje en persona. Y eso depende de varias cosas, varias variables. La intención es proveer eso al principio del tercer trimestre, que es el día 3 de marzo. Pero eso depende de cómo es la tasa de positividad en la comunidad. Si está debajo de 8, vamos a poder empezar en esa fecha. Si está por encima de esa fecha, vamos a tener que esperar que baje debajo de esa tasa, que otra vez es 8%. También tenemos que fijar en si tenemos los suficientes maestros para tener una maestra para cada estudiante. Otra vez este número es 53 para kinder hasta quinto grado.
Many districts that are currently offering hybrid learning are already planning to take a 2-week break after spring break, which is coming up at the end of March, as it is often a high travel time, to be proactive and try to prevent the transmission of the virus upon students' return.
Muchos de los distritos que están ya ofreciendo aprendizaje en persona están considerando tomar un descanso después del descanso de primavera. Y eso es para evitar la transmisión del virus. Entonces, 2 semanas normalmente es el tiempo de ese descanso después del descanso de primavera.
If we are in session prior to spring break, we too may have to take that adaptive pause right for the 2 weeks following spring break, in which all students would be back to 100% remote learning.
Si logramos abrir las escuelas antes del descanso de primavera, que es la semana, la semana final del marzo, nosotros vamos a tener que pausar la escuela en persona por 2 semanas también.
What additional steps is the district taking to ensure that classrooms and schools are clean and sanitized? So we have a phenomenal custodial staff here in District 104. They will be working once the students leave and the teachers leave for the day to sanitize all classroom spaces. We have all the sanitization equipment that we require to make sure that the classrooms are completely sanitized during that evening hours. We're also adding, as I had noted, a bipolar ionization filter to each unit ventilator that also scrubs the air each time the air cycles through the unit ventilator.
Esta pregunta se trata de los pasos adicionales que estamos tomando en el distrito para garantizar que los salones de clases y la escuela estén limpios y desinfectados. Como hemos comentado antes, el personal de la escuela cada día va a desinfectar, limpiar y desinfectar todos los salones, todos los pasillos, todos los edificios. Y también podemos compartir otra vez que vamos a tener una actualización del sistema de aire en todas las escuelas para que puedan mejorar la calidad de aire en todas las escuelas.
What specific procedures will be in place, classroom, hallway, bathroom, sharing materials, etc., to keep everyone safe? The adults in the building will continue to share safety protocols with the students, reinforcing the IDPH guidelines about staying 6 feet apart, social distancing at all times, making sure that their masks are being worn over their face and nose at all times, following good hand washing practices and hand sanitization as well.
¿Qué procedimientos específicos vamos a implementar para mantener a todos a salvo y sano aquí en la escuela? Otra vez podemos compartir que vamos a estar siguiendo las pautas del Departamento de Salud de Illinois acerca del distanciamiento social, lavado de manos, desinfectante de manos, y vamos a reforzar todos estos protocolos con un sistema de calcomanías en el piso, de la instalación de desinfectante de mano y también los procedimientos y protocolos que vamos a seguir todos los días.
Students will not be moving unsupervised to the classroom like they would in a normal school year. They will always be with an adult or with their entire class.
Los estudiantes no van a estar moviendo durante el día como normalmente. Van a permanecer en sus salones o van a estar con un adulto.
That ends the formal portion of our presentation. Mrs. Johnson, our special ed director, is going to read off questions that have been entered in the chat, and we'll answer them one by one. You are welcome to stay along for that, or you can also tune back into the recording if at any point you need to leave the meeting.
Ya hemos concluido con nuestra presentación formal. La señora Johnson, que es la directora de Educación Especial, va ahora a repasar las preguntas que ustedes han puesto en el chat y vamos a contestar esas.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Prior to her beginning to read the questions that were typed into chat, I didn't type my question into chat. I figured there'd be an FAQ session at the end. Is it possible for us to ask questions that haven't been typed into chat and not extend this much longer?
Yes, please go ahead.
So I actually have two questions. What's your plan if a teacher or child tests positive that has exposed the rest of their class? So what's the level of transparency with parents? Are you going to be notifying so that we then have to test our household, or how's that going to work?
That's correct. We have a response plan in place. If a student tests positive, we will do our contact tracing and notify anyone who is within 6 feet of that student for more than 15 minutes, so that family would be aware as well.
So then does class go to remote for that during that period?
That is correct. They would be switched to full remote, including the teacher at that time.
Okay. And then my second question is, will we be notified which teachers will be going back to the classroom so that we can make an informed decision of sending our kids back to having the teacher in person versus just having a teacher aide or somebody else that's physically present in the class. The reason I ask is the only reason I would be sending my kids back is because they would be needing the support of their current teacher. And so if it's just for them to go in school to watch a screen, then it kind of changes, you know, the decision making on the parent side.
Yes, I understand. So we are going to open the survey right after this meeting for parents, but we won't know exactly what our staffing commitment will be until the first part of next week. However, the parent survey will be open until the middle to the end of next week. And we do encourage that parents with any questions reach out to your building principal or your building teacher before, or your classroom teacher before you complete the survey.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all for your time and for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let me translate that. Una participante tenía una pregunta, dos preguntas acerca de la reapertura de escuelas, obviamente. La primera pregunta fue si, o la segunda pregunta fue si van a saber si los maestros de cada salón van a regresar, porque esto va a afectar la decisión. Y la respuesta a esa es que vamos a abrir la encuesta de padres ahorita, después de la junta, pero no vamos a saber cuáles maestros inmediatamente van a poder regresar a la escuela. Si tiene alguna pregunta específica acerca de eso, ustedes pueden comunicarse con los directores de la escuela. La primera pregunta fue si hay un caso confirmado de COVID en una clase. Los maestros y los estudiantes van a tener que hacer una cuarentena, y la respuesta es que probablemente sí, vamos a tener un sistema de respuesta, y si un estudiante o un adulto tiene contacto cercano, que se define por contacto con una persona que tiene COVID dentro de 6 pies por más que 15 minutos en un día, eso se considera contacto cercano, y vamos a tener que elegir una cuarentena para cada persona que está en esta situación.
Tengo una pregunta.
Sí, go ahead.
Sí, señor.
Si no acepto que mi hija vaya a clases en persona, ¿lo puede tomar en computadora como siempre lo ha hecho?
Déjeme traducir, señor. The question is if dad elects to keep his daughter in remote learning, will she continue as she has up to this point in the school year? And
yes,
I can answer that.
Yes, you would. The only difference being if she is an AM student, she would switch to a PM schedule.
Sí, señor, vamos a tener que continuar a ofrecer el aprendizaje en remoto. El único cambio que puede afectar a su hija es si tiene su instrucción directa en la mañana, va a cambiar el horario hasta la tarde, porque ya está dividido en dos porciones. Una porción en que está con su maestra. Si eso es en la mañana, va a cambiar a la tarde, pero sí puede seguir en casa con el aprendizaje remoto.
Ok, si llego a aceptar que sí vaya en persona mi hija, hay transporte disponible para que lo pase recogiendo el bus mi hija cerca de aquí de la casa, de la dirección.
Sí, déjeme traducir. Dad wants to know if he does elect to send his daughter to school in person, will there be transfer?
So on the survey, we're asking parents what their level of interest and need in transportation would be, and then a decision will be made after that.
Señor, la respuesta es que no sabemos todavía. En la encuesta que usted va a llenar, hay una pregunta si eso va a afectar su decisión, la disponibilidad de transporte. Si la respuesta es que sí, por muchos padres puede ser que vamos a ofrecerlo, pero por ahora
Ok. Gracias.
De nada. Any other questions before we begin reading them from the chat? And again, at any time, if a question comes up and you'd like to answer it, or I'd like to ask it in person, please just go ahead and indicate so, and we'll respond to it.
Hello, Ms.
I do
Munoz.
have a question.
Okay.
My question is, if I do continue to have my kids remote learning, and they're in the AM class, now they're gonna have to be switched to the PM class, is that correct?
That's correct. So in the morning, they would have their specials. It's still same time frame as it is currently. It's just that in the morning, they will receive their specials and their guided study. And in the afternoon, they'll have their direct instruction with the teacher.
And they will still have the same teacher then, correct? I mean, how is that gonna work when you have students going to school, if they do decide to go to school, and then, you know, you have the kids that are on the computer or on the tablet, so how would that work for the learning process?
Yeah, great question. Let me allow Mr. Brigvich to interpret the first part, and then I'll answer that second question.
La pregunta fue si los niños quieren seguir con el aprendizaje remoto y si tienen su tiempo de instrucción directa con su maestra de salón en la mañana, van a tener que cambiar hasta la tarde. La respuesta es que sí, porque los maestros, si estamos dando instrucción directa, van a estar con los niños que están en la escuela en persona en la mañana, y todos los que tienen ese periodo de instrucción directa va a tener que cambiar a la tarde. El horario del día no va a cambiar, va a seguir con la misma cantidad de instrucción, nada más va a ser al revés. Van a tener sus especiales en la mañana y su instrucción directa.
So the goal and the reason we created the schedule as we did, with 3 hours in the morning hybrid and 2.5 hours in the afternoon, is to allow the classroom teacher to teach in-person students in the morning that elect to do so out of that individual's classroom or that teacher's classroom, and then they will be available to teach their remote learners just as they always have. It'll just be in the afternoon.
La razón por qué construimos el horario de este modo es en la mañana los maestros van a poder dar instrucción a los estudiantes que están presentes físicamente en las escuelas en la mañana, y luego van a poder seguir dando instrucción directa, pero de modo remoto en la tarde. Y eso va a ser exactamente igual como hemos hecho hasta ahora a este punto en el año.
Ms. Munoz, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. I have a daughter who goes, well, last year they would pick her up at 7:45 at the school because she goes to Walsh. My other children, Walker, my other daughters go either to Heritage or to Graves. Now I understand the transportation. Are they gonna be able to accommodate the children? Because if the children start at 7:50, but you got to transport another child to a different school, are they gonna give them, how is that gonna work?
That's a good question.
John, do you want to respond? And before, do you want to go ahead and respond?
La pregunta fue si tiene niños en varias escuelas. Antes tuvimos un sistema de transporte que los niños pueden subir en un autobús, por ejemplo, en Graves Heritage y ir a una otra escuela, mientras sus hermanos pueden quedarse en Heritage o Graves. ¿Y cómo vamos a poder acomodar esta situación de transporte si vamos?
So that's another good question. So we will structure, if there's demand for transportation, we will structure the arrival and departure times so that each student is arriving at the school of attendance campus between 7:30 and 7:40 each day.
Okay, so it would be a little bit earlier than how you guys used to do last year.
Correct. There'll be no breakfast.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. There'll be no breakfast served on site, so
Okay.
it'll help a little bit with the early times, but that is the plan, to have them arrive on campus between 7:30 and 7:40.
Okay, now, so 6 through 8 would be just remote learning for the rest of the year, correct?
That's not yet been fully determined, but definitely for the start, it's going to be, they'll continue remote learning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, just to understand, so I have a pre-K, she goes at 7:50, so she would continue the 7:50 till 10:40, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, regular time, and then they get out, correct?
If we're able to do a daily schedule, correct? Yeah.
Okay, now for the, because I have a first grader, she right now has specials in the morning, and then the afternoon at 12:20, she goes back with her regular teacher. Now that would be remote learning, because I'm trying to understand. I'm reading comments and I'm getting kind of confused.
So if you were to elect remote learning for your daughter, who is currently receiving in-person instruction in the afternoon, then her schedule would not change at all.
Okay, so it would be the same. So would she attend just for the morning part then? For like specials, is that how, or are they gonna only meet with the teacher?
The only instruction in person is with the teacher. The specials will still be remote. So she would
Okay,
still be,
so she would be starting in the afternoon then with the teacher. She would, because on one of the sheets it said 12:20 to 2:50 or 2:30 or something like that, that they would be doing remote learning. Now, how is that gonna work?
so let me ask a clarification question. I know we're leaving John, Mr. Brickfitch, a lot to translate here, but
No, that's fine.
are you saying that you would be electing hybrid instruction, in-person instruction for your daughter?
Well, yeah, but I just, because like I said, I have two that are going to Graves right now, and they're one goes to pre-K and she's till 10:40, which that's fine. But I have a first grader who right now, with the e-learning that we're having, she goes in at 7:50, but she does independent work first, and then she has at 12:20 with her teacher. Now, how is that? Now is she gonna be in that group B where they go in a different day? I think that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. So if you were to elect hybrid or in-person learning for your first grader, she would come to school in the morning with her current classroom teacher for instruction.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon, she would have her specials and her independent study.
Oh, so then it's gonna switch. Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Mr.
Let me
Brickfitch.
try and capture that. La primera pregunta era de transporte, si vamos a poder acomodar a las familias que tienen estudiantes en varias escuelas. Y la respuesta es que probablemente sí, pero eso va a depender si hay demanda, hay necesidad para transporte, y eso va a depender de las respuestas de las encuestas. Y el objetivo es llevar a todos los estudiantes a sus escuelas entre 7:30 y 7:40 en la mañana, para que puedan entrar con tiempo a sus salones para empezar el día a las 7:50. La segunda pregunta, o una serie de preguntas, se trataba de diferentes circunstancias. La señora tiene un estudiante que está en pre-kinder, que va a recibir su instrucción en la mañana y va a entrar a las 7:50 y salir a las 10:40. Y la pregunta fue si tiene otro estudiante, una hermana mayor que está primero en la Graves, cómo va a afectar su horario, porque ahora está recibiendo su instrucción directa en la tarde. Y la respuesta es que todos los niños que van a recibir instrucción en persona van a presentarse en la mañana. Entonces, en esta situación, el horario de esa estudiante va a cambiar. ahora está recibiendo su instrucción directa en la tarde y está haciendo su trabajo independiente y sus especiales en la mañana. Esto va a cambiar si su mamá, si los padres eligen mandar al estudiante en persona a la escuela. Instrucción directa en persona en la mañana y luego en la tarde va a regresar a casa para tener su instrucción remota. I think I got it all.
I have a question.
Yes,
Hello?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think a parent had asked this, but this part was not answered. So she had asked, like, okay, if I choose to send my 2 kids to school and somebody tested positive for COVID, either another student or the teacher. Now, my concern is the whole classroom itself going to have to be quarantined, and then they're going to have to do their in-learning at home, or the other kids that are, we don't know if they're positive or not, are they going to still, is the other class, if the rest of the kids are actually going to be in school? So are we only going to quarantine the infected child and teacher, or the whole class itself?
So we will follow the IDPH guideline. It's going to vary by case. So we will have to determine in the classroom if students, in fact, were 6 feet apart for majority of the day, less than that 15 minutes. So in some cases, it may be that the whole class will be quarantined. In some cases, it may be that just a portion of the class will be quarantined. But any student that falls within the 6 feet of social distancing for more than 15 minutes, then yes, those students would be asked to quarantine for the recommended timeline presented by the CDC and IDPH.
Thank you.
I have a question. Let me go ahead and translate that first, please. La primera o la pregunta fue acerca de si van a tener que hacer una cuarentena si hay un caso positivo de COVID en un salón. Y la pregunta era si hay un caso, todo el salón tiene que hacer una cuarentena o nada más algunos estudiantes. Y lo que vamos a hacer es seguir la guía, las pautas del Departamento de Salud de Illinois, que nos dice que toda persona que tiene contacto cercano a una persona que tiene COVID tiene que hacer una cuarentena. Cada caso va a ser diferente. Tenemos que determinar si todos los estudiantes en ese salón ha tenido este contacto cercano menos que 6 pies de distancia por más que 15 minutos. Entonces, en ese caso, sí, todos van a tener que tener su tiempo de cuarentena. Pero puede ser, y por eso estamos organizando los salones de este modo, con distanciamiento social, para que no tenemos que cerrar toda la escuela si tenemos un caso. Si estamos siguiendo las pautas y la guía del Departamento de Salud, solo los que tienen este contacto cercano tienen que hacer una cuarentena.
Una pregunta.
I have a question.
Sí, señora.
Pero, bueno, yo quiero hacer esta pregunta porque yo he pasado por esto. ¿Cómo van a darse cuenta si un niño está enfermo o no, o tiene el virus? Porque lo digo como lo vuelvo a repetir, porque he pasado por eso. Muchas mamás les dan medicina a los niños antes de mandarlos a la escuela si tienen calentura o algún tipo de síntoma. ¿Cómo se van a dar cuenta si a los niños les dan medicina en casa?
The question is, how will we know if students are actually sick? Oftentimes in this mom's experience, parents will give students medication if they're not feeling well to bring a fever down, for instance, and then send them to school. So how will we know, in fact, if students are sick or simply medicated to alleviate some symptoms?
It's a very good question. We won't know. So we are asking parents not to do that. We're asking parents to look out for the entire community, and if their child is sick, to keep them home.
Y la respuesta, señora, es que no vamos a saber. Lo que estamos pidiendo a todos los padres que no hagan eso. Estamos diciendo que si su hijo o hija tiene cualquier síntoma, que no les dé medicina y mandarlos de todos modos a la escuela. Estamos pidiendo que los padres no hagan eso, que nos informe que está enfermo ese niño y que se quede en casa.
Ok, muchas gracias.
Una pregunta. Si yo tomara la decisión de que mi niña fuera a las clases en persona, pero si mi niña me dice que tiene un poquito de, porque ella le tiene miedo al COVID-19, ¿verdad? Y si ella sintiera que estuviera en peligro, ¿yo podría regresarla a clases en línea?
Gracias por su pregunta. Mom would like to know if as she decides to send her daughter to school or her child to school because her son or daughter might be a little bit afraid of catching the virus, would she have the option to return to a hybrid, or excuse me, to a remote learning option at a later date?
Yes, parents will be allowed to switch from hybrid to remote, but we will not allow, due to class rostering, for parents to switch from remote to hybrid after this election period.
Gracias, señora. La respuesta es que sí. Déjeme contestar, señora. La respuesta es que sí. Si inicialmente usted escoge mandar a su hija a la escuela y luego de repente más tarde cambia de idea, puede sí regresar al aprendizaje remoto. Pero no vamos a dejar a los padres que hagan lo opuesto. Si empieza en remoto, no van a poder mandar a sus estudiantes más tarde. Por eso de las cantidades de estudiantes no podemos ir de este sentido. Podemos sí regresar los estudiantes en remoto, pero no al revés.
Ok, gracias.
De nada, usted.
My question is, so we still have that option of keeping them at home?
Correct. Remote learning is still an option to parents.
Okay, because, well, I have underlying issues. So for me, it would be safe for me not to send my kids. And I just wanted to make sure that I still had that option.
Yes,
I mean, we're almost done with the school year. Might as well just keep them at my house.
Yes, we can appreciate and understand that each parent's going to make a decision based upon the needs of their household. So in the survey, you'll have the option to elect remote learning for the remainder of the year.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That was my only question and concern because, yeah, I don't want to end up in the hospital as other, parents as well might have other health issues as well. It's just a little scary.
Yes, well, be safe and be well.
La pregunta fue si tiene algunas circunstancias en que sea más seguro para una familia quedarse en casa los estudiantes, si es posible. Y la respuesta es que sí. Ustedes pueden decidir que para su situación, cada familia, cada casa es diferente. Es mejor por cuestiones de salud, por cuestiones de horario, por cuestiones de comodidad. Pueden quedarse en casa para lo que queda del año. Nada más tiene que indicarlo en la encuesta.
Hi, I have a question.
Just go ahead.
So you know how at 7:50 every day they have to go for attendance? Now, is that going to change if I keep my kids remote for PM? So are they going to have to go still for 7:50 for attendance and then go to activities and then again attendance at 12? Or is it going to change?
No, it'll still stay the same. It is, we are required by the state of Illinois to take attendance and account for at least a 5-hour school day. So that is the one way that we can report to the state that the students were in attendance in both sessions.
Okay, thank you.
La pregunta fue si se decide quedarse en casa los estudiantes que tienen que cambiar su horario para instrucción directa en la tarde. Todavía tiene que presentarse a las 7:50 de la mañana para asistencia. La respuesta es que sí. Es un requisito del Estado. Tenemos que tomar asistencia cada día y proveer un día escolar de 5 horas por lo menos. Entonces, sí, eso va a continuar. Todos los estudiantes que están en remoto tienen que presentarse a las 7:50, aunque sea para sus especiales. Tomamos la asistencia y luego ellos empiezan su día de especiales o su instrucción o aprendizaje independiente. Y luego regresan a las 12:20 para su instrucción directa con su maestro.
I have a question.
Sí. Maestro, una pregunta, perdón. Tengo a mi hija en clases after school. Quisiera saber si van a seguir con el sistema de remoto o se van a presentar ya para la práctica de mariachi.
Perdón, señor. ¿Eso se toca nada más al programa de mariachi?
Sí, nada más, sí, tengo esa duda de lo de mariachi.
Okay.
Solamente.
Déjame traducirlo. Dad has daughter in our after-school mariachi program, and he's wondering if that will be continue to be remote or if that will be offered in person.
Good question. At this time, our after-school programs will remain remote, but that may change as the spring progresses.
Señor, la respuesta es durante este tiempo inicial, todos los programas después de la escuela se van a quedar en este modo remoto. Eso puede cambiar dentro de la primavera, pero va a depender de cómo progresa toda la cosa. Por ahora se van a quedar los de mariachi y los programas después de la escuela en remoto.
Okay.
Yo tengo una pregunta.
Yes.
Los niños que se van a quedar en casa, ¿les van a cambiar el maestro o va a ser el mismo maestro?
Gracias, señora. The question is, the students who elect for remote learning, will they have the same teacher or will their teacher change?
So the goal of our schedule is to keep all the teachers the same as they are currently. So that is our recommendation.
Señora, la respuesta es que el objetivo y la recomendación que estamos haciendo para la mesa directiva es que todos los estudiantes en kinder hasta quinto se queden con su mismo maestro. Entonces, el objetivo es que no, que van a seguir, aunque tenga instrucción remota, va a seguir con su misma maestra.
Gracias.
De nada, usted.
Yo tengo otra pregunta.
Miss Guadalupe Bravo, go ahead.
Mi pregunta es, perdón, sí, lo hago yo. Mi pregunta es sobre la respuesta que dieron a otra pregunta. Dijeron que, suponer, si yo decido mandar a mi hijo a la escuela ahorita y después decido que no, me lo van a aceptar en remoto. ¿Por qué si ahorita yo decido que no, pero yo veo que la pandemia está más abajo, veo que quizás no es igual o puedo tener ya la opción cuando haga menos frío casi al terminar, mi hijo regresa a la escuela? La respuesta fue que no. Mi pregunta es ¿por qué? Y otra, ¿cómo sería si yo decido mandar a mi hijo? ¿Cómo va a ser la entrada? ¿Cómo van a entrar? ¿Van a entrar como antes? ¿Por carro? ¿Por puerta? ¿Por qué puerta?
Gracias, señora. Déjeme traducirlo. Two questions. The first is a follow-up to a question that was answered earlier and just asking for some clarification. The question that we had earlier about parents choosing to opt for in-person instruction and the possibility at a later time of reverting to remote. We said that the answer is yes, that is allowable. And the question is this: how come we are not allowing it to go the other way for parents who choose to keep them at home, but then later, in the spring, we notice that the numbers are far reduced, the weather improves, et cetera, et cetera. Why will we not allow students to return to school in person? And, maybe we can field that question. And there was another follow-up question about, entering the building procedures.
Certainly, a great question. Our schedule, whether it's daily or an AB schedule, is going to be entirely dependent upon how many parents respond for in-person instruction. And so once that's set, we cannot, that'll be set, rosters will be set. So if we have just enough parents to have daily instruction, and then later in the spring, we had a number of parents that wanted to jump in and then have to cause us to go to an AB schedule, that wouldn't be fair to the parents who made the decision earlier on in the cycle. So out of fairness of the parents, it's very easy for a child to switch back to remote. It's more complicated with the entire schedule and with all the other parents in the community to switch back to a hybrid position once we begin, whatever date that happens to be.
Señora, la respuesta a la primera pregunta, ¿por qué no podemos dejar a los estudiantes cambiar desde remoto hasta en persona? La respuesta es esa. El horario va a depender de cuántos estudiantes vamos a tener en la escuela. Por ejemplo, si tenemos menos que 50%, vamos a poder ofrecer escuelas 5 días a la semana. Si tenemos más que 50%, entonces no vamos a poder hacer esto. Vamos a tener un horario de 2 días. Y imagínese si pues 100 estudiantes quieren regresar, esto va a cambiar completamente el horario para los estudiantes que ya están en sus salones. Y eso no sería apropiado, justo para estos padres en cuestión de sus planes, de todo eso. Y por eso es la razón por no dejar que los estudiantes cambien de remoto hasta en persona. Y ahora voy a presentar la respuesta al superintendente, la segunda pregunta que tenía acerca de la entrada en la mañana. Troy, the second question was how will entrance into the building look? Will they be in line? Will it be dropped off by car? What doors will they go through? I guess it's more of a logistical question.
Yes, another good question. We will still have a car line at each of the schools. We will also have parents that choose to walk their students to school. At each of the locations, we've painted on the hard surface playgrounds spaces for students to stand while they're waiting for their teacher to collect them. So as students come onto the campus, either by car, by bus, by foot, they will be checked to make sure that they have had their COVID screener completed. They'll have their temperature checked, and then they'll go stand in line and await their teacher to pick them up from that line, and they will go in the door that the teacher and the principal have designated as that grade level door.
Señora, la respuesta acerca de la entrada es que va a seguir algo parecido a lo que hicimos antes. Obviamente tenemos que chequear las evaluaciones. Entonces, en cada escuela vamos a fijar en el espacio pavimentado, o sea, el cemento allá afuera de la escuela va a poner estos calcomanías para mantener el distanciamiento social de 6 pies y vamos a tener que chequear la evaluación y tomar la temperatura. Una vez que hace eso, que haga eso, cada estudiante van a poder entrar en la oficina, o sea, en la escuela, por la puerta designada para este grado. Y eso va a depender de cada escuela. Cada escuela es diferente, tiene diferentes puertas, diferente cantidad de estudiantes y eso se tiene que determinar todavía dependiendo de cuántos estudiantes quieren regresar cada día.
Disculpe, tengo una pregunta.
Gracias.
De nada. Sí, señor.
Oiga, disculpe, yo tengo a mi hijo en clase de 12:20 a 2:50 y mi pregunta es si yo lo quisiera dejar así, él se puede quedar así, va a seguir teniendo su misma maestra y toda la rutina igual o algo va a cambiar.
¿Y usted quiere que se quede en casa o quiere mandarlo a la escuela en persona?
Pues yo en lo personal, yo me gustaría que él todavía se quedara todavía lo que es en casa.
Ok, está bien. Déjeme traducir la pregunta. The question is, right now, student has a PM schedule for direct instruction. If they chose to continue with the remote schedule, would the schedule change in any way?
No, they would stay in the afternoon direct instruction on the same schedule.
¿Con la misma maestra?
Sí, señor. No vamos vuelvo a repetir que el objetivo de este horario es que todos los niños se queden con su maestro que han tenido durante todo el año. Y como su hijo o hija tiene su instrucción directa en la tarde, eso tampoco va a cambiar.
Ok,
Entonces
muchísimas gracias. Es todo.
Sí, de
Tengo
nada.
una
I have a
pregunta.
question. Mi pregunta es,
Tengo una pregunta.
tengo una pregunta yo.
Ok, adelante, por favor, señora.
Estaba yo en la llamada, pero se me estaba cortando la llamada. Entonces, mi pregunta es, yo no sé cómo van a estar los niños por la mañana. ¿Va por nombre o por apellido? Porque están diciendo que van a dividir en 2 clases, por la mañana y por la tarde. ¿Yo cómo puedo saber que mi niño va a ir en la mañana? Porque se estuvo cortando mi teléfono y no puedo escuchar muy bien. Y me quedé con esta duda.
Déjeme traducir. Mom had some issues with the sound, and she wanted to know how we were going to divide students. She was left with the impression that they might be divided by name, whether it was their first name or their last name, and she's wondering if she can figure out, given her child's name, if she would be in the morning or in the afternoon. I think that, that was just a misunderstanding.
So the only reason we would split students into 2 groups is if there were more than 50 to 55% response for hybrid learning. And we would divide those students by alphabet, much like Argo, to allow for older siblings to be home at the same time or day of the week. So all hybrid students, regardless of their last name, will attend school in person in the mornings only.
Señora, la pregunta era, o sea, la respuesta a su pregunta era esa. La única razón por dividir los estudiantes en 2 grupos sería si más que la mitad de los estudiantes quieren regresar. Y si este es el caso, no tenemos espacio para todos los estudiantes al mismo tiempo. Entonces vamos a dividir los grupos en un grupo A y un grupo B. El grupo A va a estar lunes y martes en la mañana. El grupo B va a estar jueves y viernes, pero también en la mañana. Ningún estudiante va a presentarse en la tarde para instrucción directa. Entonces, no podemos decir si vamos a hacer eso. Tenemos que esperar que todos los padres llenen su encuesta para ver si vamos a poder ofrecer un horario de 5 días o de 2 días. Pero de todos modos va a ser en la mañana y es el apellido, ¿no?
Okay, tengo una pregunta.
Sí, señora.
Mi pregunta, oh my God. Tengo una pregunta acerca de las clases especiales. ¿Cómo va a funcionar para los estudiantes?
Gracias. ¿Clases especiales se refiere a arte, música, educación física, cosas así?
No. Mi hijo toma clases especiales, tiene clases especiales de speech therapy y todo eso.
Sí, está en el programa de educación especial.
Claro.
Ok, déjame traducir, señor. The question was, how will this work for students who have IEPs, who are enrolled in our special education department? How will what plans are we making for those students?
Ms. Johnson, would you like to step in and answer that one directly?
Certainly, it will be similar for students in general education, where they will have their core academics, and then they will also receive their related therapies opposite that.
La respuesta, señora, es que va a ser exactamente igual que los estudiantes que no están en educación especial. Van a tener sus clases principales, lectura, matemáticas, ciencias, estudios sociales, con sus compañeros de clase debajo de la instrucción o de la supervisión de su maestra de educación especial. Y eso va a ser durante la mañana, si están está asistiendo en persona, y si se queda en casa va a estar en la tarde. Y las clases especiales educación, o sea, educación física, música, arte, va a ser de modo remoto, igual que ahora.
Would the kids wear uniforms still for the 3 hours?
Yes. The uniform policy will still be in place for the hybrid learners.
Would they have lockers as well?
No, we will not be allowing locker use. Students will keep everything with them that they bring to school.
And there will be bus transportation in order for them to get to Wharton School?
That's going to be determined by the parent response on the survey. So please respond that you need transportation on the survey when you take it.
When will you be sending that survey out, sir?
Shortly after this town hall ends, we will send out a link, and you can also access it through our website.
Okay. What actual date is spring break? You said the end of March.
It begins March 29th.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
La pregunta fue si vamos a usar uniforme, se va a aplicar la póliza de uniforme para los estudiantes que vienen en persona. La respuesta es que sí. Por las 3 horas que están con nosotros tienen que llevar un uniforme. Otra pregunta fue si vamos a proveer transporte a las escuelas, y eso otra vez volvemos a repetir, que depende de la demanda. Si los suficientes estudiantes necesitan transporte, lo vamos a proveer. Es importante que ustedes indican en su encuesta si necesita transporte. Y la última pregunta estaba dirigido a esos asuntos de casilleros, de los lockers. Entonces, los estudiantes no van a poder acceder a sus casilleros aquí en la escuela. No vamos a dejar que los estudiantes usen sus lockers.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this meeting, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding completely before I answer the survey. Will each of the kids be 6 feet apart?
Yes, so the Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines and the State Board of Education state that students should remain 6 feet apart whenever possible. So we're going to do our best to remind students to stay 6 feet apart. I'm sure during the very first few days of school, students are going to want to try to give each other hugs, get close to one another, and it'll be our job as the adults on campus to remind them to stay apart. We have desk positions 6 feet apart in the classrooms. Students will remain in those seats the entire time they're in the 3-hour session. And when they're in the hallway, they will stay 6 feet apart by using the visual markers that are on the floor.
Okay, so to go back when we were talking about quarantining for a positive case, it'd be pretty hard to accumulate 15 minutes unless it's like a one-on-one or like the teacher has close contact, such as like if they're in kindergarten. But as far as like a student being positive, for another student to accumulate that 15 minutes within 24 hours would be pretty hard. So if there is a positive case, it's not likely the whole classroom would be out unless it's a little, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then as far as like checking in, I heard you talk about like the check-in before school. Would that be like something for the parents to certify their kids that they're like symptom-free?
Yes, exactly. So we have pre-printed pads that have the COVID symptoms listed. Parents will be asked to indicate whether or not the students have those symptoms and take their temperature before sending them off to school. And only students who are non-symptomatic or asymptomatic should be sent to school that day. We are exploring a couple of other options that may automate this a little bit, but for right now, that's what we're proceeding with.
Okay, so my question would be, say my son has a runny nose and that's a COVID symptom. So I'm not going to send him to school. I'm not sending in the pad. I call him in, I say he's sick. Somebody going to follow up with me and say, okay, well, you need to do one of the 3 things to get your kid back in school, either a doctor's note with alternative diagnosis, a negative COVID test, or stay home for the 10 days.
Yes, our nursing staff will be the ones to contact. It may also default to our school secretaries, but yes, someone would be in contact with you to follow up.
Okay, I just want to make sure like no one's gonna be coming in like the next day after they were out with a runny nose or a headache. And then my other question would be, is your district going to have a travel quarantine requirement? I know some districts are opting out of it.
I'm sorry, you slightly broke up. I didn't catch the word you used before the
A
quarantine.
travel quarantine, travel. So like if I went somewhere like out of state or out of the US, will I have a mandatory quarantine for my child or no?
We haven't explored that at the committee level yet, but I would imagine we'll follow best practices. And if that's the case, then yes, we would put it in place.
Okay. And my other question is, if a teacher is out with COVID or quarantining because they were a close contact, do you have a good, like, substantial amount of subs to fill that place of the teacher?
No, like many districts, we're actually experiencing a sub shortage. And so we will be looking to other methods where we may have to require that class be on remote learning that day. If we'll try to maintain the hybrid schedule as much as we can, but there are going to be some cases where we won't have a teacher on site for that class and they would have to go remote that day.
Okay. And will the teachers be expected to then remote teach? Because like if they're not feeling well, I can't see them being able to.
If they're, we would expect them to teach if they're asymptomatic and still feeling well enough to teach. Otherwise, they would use a sick day.
Okay. And then I just want to throw out there, our district uses My MedBot. It works wonders. And we also have our staff check-in as well as the students because we hold everyone to the same expectations. Is that something you'll be doing also?
Yes, we already have an online check-in system for staff.
Okay.
It is also available to students, but we're looking at other models as well to see if there's something that's more streamlined and will make the process a little faster.
Okay. And there's going to be no snack during
Correct.
this time. Okay,
Correct, no
perfect.
snack.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Buenas
I
tardes.
have a quick question. I know it's going back to somebody had mentioned it for like the drop offs for like pre-K and stuff. When parents drop off, is there gonna be a where they check the parent or whoever dropped off the child? Are they gonna be checked for temperature wise? Because I would assume because you're in the little, the area where they drop off the kids.
So this was actually brought up in an earlier meeting, and we're going to explore whether or not we have the ability to do that legally.
Okay.
We would be checking students for sure, and we're going to explore whether or not we can actually require a parent to also have their temperature taken.
Okay, yeah, because I know in like when you go to the doctor or where you go somewhere, they tell you, okay, let me just do a quick temperature check just to make sure that you're not, because sometimes if you're a single parent and you have no you're sending your child because they're fine, you know what I'm saying, you're still stepping in that situation. So that's why I was wondering if they're gonna do parent, like temperature check. And also my second question would be, now if students do go back to school, are they gonna be having to buy supplies for themselves? Because I know since you said that the lockers aren't gonna be used, so are they gonna be carrying are we supposed to provide them with like a book bag, their own stuff so that they can put their own stuff away? Or is that gonna be just, like the teacher is gonna say, this is yours, I'm going to put it away when we're done, or whatever the case?
Yeah, another good question. It will largely depend on how many parents sign up for hybrid. If we're operating daily, it may be that a student may leave their possessions on the desk and be sanitized at night. If we have to go to an AB schedule, then we would, I think students carrying backpacks with their supplies, they're going to have to bring their Chromebook or iPad with them to and from school daily.
Okay.
Well, so I think a backpack is a great idea to help
But
students.
now would that consider for like the pre-K? Because I know, I mean, I know they're gonna only be there for like 2 hours, but I know they have like their own, you know, they have their own tablets like that they're using right now. Obviously they're probably not gonna use that, but like their crayons, their markers, are they gonna have like just a specific for each child to come and say, okay, well, every morning this is gonna be what you're gonna use. You're not gonna use your you know, your neighbors. You're gonna, whatever you have in your book bag is just for you. Now, is that gonna be, now I understand, depending on how many students are going to be in the class, but I mean, if they're gonna try to maintain everything sanitized, I mean, I you know, I don't know how preschoolers are gonna understand that, because I'm mine right now is you know, she sees something, oh, I'm gonna pick it up, and it's kind of like, okay, well, that's not yours, don't touch. You know, how is that gonna work where their span of, not that I'm saying that they don't not all understand, but some, you know, just want to be like, well, I want to grab that one, that's mine. Or so that's why I was wondering, are they gonna have to have their own supplies so that they can be monitored and say, hey, you know what, this is yours, this got to go in your book bag? Or is it going to be like teacher where she's going to hand something out and then write their name and then collect that, sanitize that?
So I'm going to defer your questions to Ms. Dunn, who's also on this meeting, because she and her team have worked out a plan for the pre-K programs. Ms. Dunn, would you like to respond?
Yes, so for pre-K, we will be supplying all of the supplies for students who choose hybrid. They will have their own materials and own supplies for when they're in class.
Okay.
Right. We were already in the process of ordering, waiting for parent survey responses, and then we'll be ordering for the amount of students who choose in person.
Okay, sounds good.
Tengo una pregunta.
Sí, señor.
Mire, bueno, para empezar quiero dar las gracias por tomar nuestras sugerencias al distrito. Gracias. Después de esto quiero preguntar, por lo que veo hay padres que están sugiriendo que a lo mejor van a ir a clases. Lo que a mí concierne es que mi hija no vaya, pero mi pregunta es si después de esa junta la mayoría de los padres deciden regresar a clases, ¿sería mi hija obligada a ir a clases a la escuela entonces?
Gracias por su pregunta. Déjeme traducirlo. Dad said that, you know, first of all, thank you very much for taking our suggestions, and he's very appreciative of all our efforts. His question is this. He notices that a number of parents on the call are suggesting that their students return to school. If the majority of students opt to return to school, will his daughter, who he prefers stay at home, be obligated to return to school in person?
Great question. No, they will not. We will maintain a remote learning component no matter how many hybrid or how many parents request hybrid learning. We will always have that afternoon component. We will not be serving meals on campus for the foreseeable future because that would require masks be taken off for students to eat their meals. So that split day schedule will exist, and we'll be able to maintain that remote learning component for the rest of the third trimester.
Señor, la respuesta es que no. Siempre va a quedar por lo que queda del año una opción de mantener sus hijos en casa, si prefiere que se quede en casa. Siempre vamos a tener que reservar este periodo en la tarde para instrucción remota, porque no podemos dejar que los estudiantes coman aquí en el edificio. Entonces, siempre, no importa si 99% de los estudiantes quieren regresar y su hija es la única que quiere quedar en casa, vamos a tener que mantener esta opción para los que quieran.
Un último punto, solo para una sugerencia y opinión a los demás padres antes de sugerir o terminar este meeting. Tengamos conciencia de que hay pacientes que son asintomáticos y no van a presentar síntomas, y corremos el riesgo todos de volver a caer otra vez más en problemas, toda la comunidad. Y solamente es eso, es una pequeña opinión, pero gracias por escucharnos y y gracias.
Para servirle, Dad just wanted to make a comment and, you know, basically for everybody who's on the call that, you know, we have to be conscious as a community that, you know, many infected people with positive COVID diagnoses remain asymptomatic. And, you know, we need to be cautious and make sure that we don't end up where we started. So he just wanted to offer that comment to the group, not a question, just a comment.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions before we move on to the chat? Yes. Ms. Santana, go ahead.
Will there be a requirement for the vaccine for the fall of 2021?
They cannot require vaccines.
Currently, there is no way that we can require vaccines to be mandated. If there is a change in the law, then we, of course, would follow the law.
So then follow up. Oh, sorry, Mr. Berovich, go ahead.
La pregunta fue si vamos a tener un requisito de vacunas para el empiezo del año escolar que viene en el otoño. Y la respuesta es no, legalmente no podemos requerir que los maestros ni los estudiantes tengan vacuna, pero vamos a seguir siempre la ley y las pautas del Departamento de Salud de
So I think I heard you in your translation correctly that you're not requiring teachers either, correct?
we're not able to require anybody to do that.
I have one quick question. Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
go ahead.
Okay, and maybe I missed it at the beginning. Now this whole plan is for pre-K through 5, correct?
Correct.
Okay, what about the junior high?
So we're phasing this in beginning with pre-K through 5. The challenge with the middle school schedule and moving to a hybrid schedule such as this is that in doing so, we would be cutting out half of the instructional day for students based on how we set up our schedule for remote learning. So as it's operating currently, even though there's a big block of the middle of the day that students are taking a break, they're receiving every class every day. And they're learning in groups of 25 to 30. To bring them on campus, we have to break that into groups of no more than 13. That's about our capacity for middle school's classrooms. And so to do so, we're now dividing everybody in half, so they would only receive half the instruction each day, and we'd be looking at some type of A/B schedule. So we're continuing to explore how we can potentially make this happen without impacting class time or subject exposure, but we haven't quite figured that out yet. Quite frankly, it's working well with every student receiving every subject as it stands currently.
So, okay, so I have a question then. Have you gone to other districts to find out what they're doing? Only because I know Peyton my daughter's in 7th grade, and she has a friend who's in the Hickory Hills district. I'm not sure what number it is. And they've been remote since the beginning. She's in junior high, and not remote, I'm sorry, hybrid since the beginning of this whole mess. So I guess I'm just wondering, have you taken suggestions from any other school districts to try and make this work? Because I really want my kid back in school, I'll be honest with you.
No, understood. We certainly are working toward that end. We have been in contact with districts 108, 109 in particular. Mrs. Malone is working through, we actually had an opportunity to talk to some administrators from District 109. What they're doing is they're having 1 week of students in.
Right. I have friends in that district as well.
Right. The challenge there is that they're bringing in the students for, I believe, 5 hours straight. And it could be a possibility for us, but then they're off for the next week. The next week they're on remote learning. So
right.
We're trying to find what the best balance is for our students who are used to having every class every day, all of their peers. So we are working on it. We're not going to just walk away from it, but we haven't figured it out yet.
All right. Well, thank you.
I have a question.
Hi, I have a question.
I was wondering with the students, because they're required to wear the mask all day for 3 hours, will they be able to go outside and just get like a mask break?
Yes, teachers can build that into their schedule.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my question is, I know this is looking forward too much into the future, but starting, the new school year in August 2021, do we feel that everybody's going to go back to school full on in school, or is it still going to be half and half, or we have not even thought about this yet? That's my question.
We're always thinking 6 months to 8 months in advance. The unfortunate thing is we don't know what's happening, what will be happening with the pandemic as we move forward. Some individuals feel that we will be offering or requiring mask wearing for some time to come while students are in school. The big question and the thing that we'll have to follow is the IDPH guidelines, the ISBE guidelines regarding the 6 feet of social distancing. For as long as that's in place, we're going to be limited in our capacity to have students on campus. Once that requirement is reduced, then we can add more students on campus at one time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Whalen, I had a quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
Let's say I start my son and I'm going to keep him home, but then maybe 3 weeks from now, I decide, you know what, things are looking up. I want to send them in. Is there a certain date that they can go back in? Like if they're remote?
As we're looking at it right now, I've answered before that there would be no opportunity for that to happen. I'll backpedal a little bit. We don't know how many parents will select hybrid. If there is a very low demand and perhaps the board decides not to even open a hybrid section, or there is room within a hybrid section, we may be able to offer a second sign up. But as we're starting off today, we're saying that if you don't elect to start when it first begins here in the near future, then you would be locked into your choice for the rest of the trimester.
Okay, I'm only asking because my son's teacher actually had a conversation with the teachers. He's in pre-K, and she said that at the beginning of each month, the children would be able to come back in building if the parents chose so.
Well, I know that pre-K is operating a little different than K-5, so I will have Ms. Dunn, if you want to jump into that, Ms. Dunn, and respond to that one.
Right, that's correct. The pre-K guidelines for our grant allow us to open up at the beginning of each month. If there is space in our hybrid e-learning model, the parents can choose at the beginning of each month to move from remote to in-person.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me maybe clarify that one. I think that's a little important. And if I could backtrack on the middle school question, I know that there are still some families on who might require that translation. Una pregunta antes que se hizo acerca del horario de la escuela intermedia en Heritage y por qué no estamos considerando regresar a los estudiantes en los grados de 6 para arriba. Y la respuesta es que debido al horario de Heritage, hemos estado dando clases en todas las materias a los estudiantes en Heritage. Y si regresamos a un horario en persona, los estudiantes van a perder un poquito de su tiempo instruccional. Y la recomendación es para empezar con los chiquitos, los grados primarios, y luego pues buscar una solución para lo que es los estudiantes en sexto, séptimo y octavo. No estamos todavía diciendo que no van a regresar este año, pero tenemos que solucionarlo. Y la pregunta que acaba de hacer la señora era de pre-kinder. La maestra de su hijo le dijo que cada mes van a poder eleccionar si pueden regresar a la escuela o no. Y la coordinadora del programa de pre-kinder, Ms. Dunn, comentó que sí, para pre-kinder es diferente para los niños en kinder para arriba. La beca que tienen ellos les deja entrar a los estudiantes cada mes si hay ocupo. Y eso es algo que tenemos que fijar. Si hay ocupo, si podemos dejar que los en pre-kinder cambie de idea de remoto hasta en persona al principio de cada mes, al principio de abril, de mayo, etc. Thank you.
Buenas noches. Yo tengo una pregunta. Hace un momento ustedes decían que si yo tengo una hija y yo la mando a la escuela y por algún momento, alguna razón a ella le da un resfriado, ¿verdad? Pero no es COVID. Yo la llevo, le hacen la prueba y que no dé positivo COVID. ¿Cuántos días ella puede quedarse en casa y ese tiempo ella va a poder tomar las clases remoto y ya después regresar a las clases normal? ¿Cómo sería?
Gracias, señora, por su pregunta. Mom wants to know if she elects for in-person hybrid learning if her daughter gets a cold or a sniffle and she's sent home, or she keeps her at home. If she goes and gets a test and she's negative, how long will she need to stay away? What is the process? And during that time where she's not able to report, will she be able to learn remotely?
Yes, another good question. So we require a doctor's note and or a negative test from a testing facility for access back into the classroom. So that's all that would be needed for that level of documentation. Any student who's out with COVID symptoms can join the remote learning class. We will not be allowing students who, the students can't wake up in the morning and say, I just don't want to go to school today and join the remote learning class. But we will allow students who are ill due to COVID and are quarantining or waiting for test results to join in remote learning.
Señora, gracias. En este caso, si lleva a su hija, hijo al doctor o a un centro de examen, de evaluación, y si tiene un resultado negativo, eso es la única cosa que necesita para regresar a la escuela. Y la segunda parte es si durante este tiempo, mientras está esperando una cita o algo así, los resultados, si van a poder los estudiantes en esta situación, juntarse con los que están aprendiendo de modo remoto. La respuesta es que sí. Si es debido a enfermedad, vamos a dejar que los niños sí siguen con su aprendizaje remoto. Pero lo que no podemos dejar es si los estudiantes pues no quieren venir a la escuela, están cansados o algo así, no pueden nada más cambiar al remoto para un día o 2 días porque no quiere venir a la escuela, nada más por razones por enfermedad.
Hola, buenas tardes. Tengo 2 preguntas y una opinión.
Sí, señor.
¿Qué tiempo falta para que acabe el ciclo escolar?
Dan has 2 questions. The first one is how much time do we have before school ends for the year?
So there are about 3 months in the school year left. Last day of school, I believe, is June 2nd. So we have the entire month of March, April, May, and just a few days in June.
Señora, aproximadamente nos quedan 3 meses en el año escolar. Lo que queda obviamente de febrero, marzo, abril y mayo. El último día de la escuela está programado para el segundo día de junio.
Ok. Mi opinión es, por protección a mi familia y la sociedad, yo prefiero no arriesgarlos por el momento y esperar este ciclo a que acabe. Otra pregunta más. ¿Qué va a pasar con los alumnos que no van a ir a la escuela?
Dan has just a comment that, he thinks that we ought to just stay closed for the rest of the school year, and that'll be his decision. And then the follow-up question is, señor, una clarificación, los estudiantes que deciden no venir, que están ausentes, ¿refiere a esos?
Correcto.
And gracias. What will happen to students who just refuse to attend or don't attend school?
So those students that have either had attendance concerns this year or are choosing not to, we'll be looking at developing a very rigorous summer school program and asking them to attend that or requiring them to attend that in June and July. So those students would be required to attend. Otherwise, they may not, depending on how much of school they've missed, they may not qualify to move on to the next grade level.
Señor, la respuesta es para los estudiantes que faltan muchos días. Vamos a estar preparando un curso en el verano para, pues, no sé, para darles más oportunidad de progresar, pero puede ser que si faltan mucho tiempo, puede ser que no califican para progresar a matricular al próximo año. Pero eso va a ser por caso por caso, depende de las circunstancias, el niño y todo eso.
Bueno, también mi punto es de que mi hijo está viendo por Zoom las clases. Yo no digo que no está asistiendo a las clases, está asistiendo a las clases, pero quiero saber si las van a seguir dando por Zoom.
Oh, sí, yo entiendo. No, disculpe. No, eso no afecta. Su hijo no se considera ausente. Está asistiendo a sus clases por Zoom. Vamos a seguir con eso. Usted va a tener la opción de quedarse en casa y seguir como lo han hecho todo el año.
Correcto, me parece perfecto. Muchísimas gracias.
A usted. Dad was just referring to his son who's been doing remote learning. He wasn't talking about truant or absent students. He was just same question, will we continue to offer the remote learning? I informed him that yes, we would.
Yo tengo otra pregunta. Mi hijo va en octavo grado. ¿Ellos cómo va a ser su graduación? ¿Van a mandar información cómo va a ser el uniforme para la graduación? ¿O todavía falta para eso?
Gracias, señora. Question, her child is in 8th grade. What are we doing about graduation? Will we be sending information? What's the plan for graduation this year?
Yes, thank you for asking. So Mrs. Malone and her middle school team are looking at a couple of different options for graduation, depending upon what phase or what tier of mitigation we might be in at the end of May. So we have a number of different ideas from the very restricted students just coming in to pick up their diplomas with their families only for a photo opportunity, all the way to having an actual graduation ceremony, perhaps in an outdoor venue. So we're looking at all the options that are available to us, and we want to make the experience as meaningful as we can to the students, while keeping everyone safe and staying within the guidelines set forth by the state.
Señora, la respuesta es que todavía no sabemos, depende de en qué nivel estamos como estado, como región. Estamos considerando diferentes opciones. Ya es muy temprano para decirle, pero estamos considerando todo. Puede ser que resulta que estamos todavía en peligro y nada más invitamos a los estudiantes para venir a la escuela a tomar una foto, agarrar su diploma, y puede ser que que se mejore mucho la situación y podemos tener una ceremonia tradicional. Obviamente vamos a estar afuera, podemos decirle que no vamos a poder hacerlo dentro en nuestro gimnasio, pero puede ser que está afuera. Todavía no sabemos. Vamos a continuar a monitorear la situación en nuestra región y en el estado.
Ok, muchas gracias.
I have one more question. I'm sorry. Summer school, is that something that's going to be offered, or right now it's up in the air?
Right
for
now,
all students?
There will be a summer school program. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, because again, we don't know what's going to happen in the next month or two with the rates in the area or across the country. But we are planning to have the summer school one way or the other, whether it be remote or some sort of a hybrid experience.
La pregunta fue acerca de escuela de verano, si vamos a ofrecer un programa y seguramente vamos a estar ofreciendo algún programa para el verano a todos los estudiantes. Todavía, igual que la respuesta anterior acerca de la graduación, no sabemos si vamos a estar en persona o qué forma va a tomar. Todavía no sabemos, es muy temprano para decidir, pero estamos ahora en planear diferentes modos y vamos a tener algún programa para todos los estudiantes, aunque sea virtual o en persona.
Hi, I have one more question. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you guys planning on doing the contact tracing, or are you planning on having the local health department do it?
Right now, our plan is to have our own nursing staff do that in partnership with the Department of Public Health, but they'll be doing the in-person training here, or in-person tracing here on campus.
Okay. And are you guys, for COVID testing, does it need to be a PCR or an antigen, or does it not matter?
We have not designated, it does not matter. We've not required one over the
Because
other.
I know not right now, Cook County is like recommending the PCR because we were a high positivity rate, but now we've dropped. So I was just curious. And then my other question is, if I have like siblings and one of the siblings sick, do both of the siblings have to stay home?
They do, yes.
And are you guys also going to be asking a question before kids enter, like if anyone in the household is sick? So if I'm sick, then my kids can't go even though they're fine?
It's part of the screening. Quite one of the screening questions is, has anyone been in contact, have any student, pardon me, has the student been in contact with anybody that has had COVID symptoms? So if the answer
I
yes
just
to
wanted
that,
to make sure.
oh,
Okay,
perfect. That's good. Good question. Thank you.
perfect. Okay, thank you.
Well, let's go ahead and jump in, Mrs. Johnson, to the questions. And if you'll just scan them, if we've already answered the question, we can just scan over. But if you find a question that we haven't discussed, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us. And then if that triggers a question, please feel free to ask your question, but we'll try and get through some of the chat questions as well.
I did scan through the questions, and I do believe that some of our staff members have been jumping in and asking the questions, and those that were not answered directly were answered as part of the presentation after the questions were posted. So I would invite anyone that still has remaining questions to please go ahead and ask them now. John, if you wouldn't mind translating.
La pregunta fue si hay preguntas todavía en el chat que no hemos respondido, y la señora Johnson dice que parece que hemos contestado a todas las preguntas, pero estamos invitando si todavía queda una duda con usted que haga preguntas ahora.
I do have a quick question. Sorry for all the questions. I think this one's going to pertain to Ms. Dunn, just because my daughter's in pre-K. And I know right now with the e-learning that we've been only doing an hour and something minutes, this would be her last year before she goes to kindergarten. My concern is I'm not sure if my daughter is gonna, if my daughter has enough, how can I say, because she's in dual language, but I feel like she doesn't have enough, she's not quite ready to go to kindergarten. Now, is there gonna, now that, if I decide to put her in, are they gonna take that into consideration? I mean, meaning that this year kind of was like, just an hour instead of the 2 hours. I mean, it wasn't like a full learning experience. I know with them being at home, they get comfortable. I know I had issues where it would take me, she would be there at 9:30 because she didn't want to wake up or whatever the thing is, But with that being said, are they going to, how would that go? I mean, are they gonna I don't know, do like activities after, like kind of like a summer thing for like those who need a little bit more?
Right, so as Dr. Whalen did say, we will address the summer programming, and if able to, we would continue to offer summer programming for students transitioning into kindergarten.
Okay.
And that is our hope and our goal.
Okay.
Very good question. Thank you.
I have a question though. I heard that kids for pre-K are not gonna need to buy their own supplies, but what about for the kids that are from K to 5? Are they gonna need their own supplies? Are we gonna need to buy them supplies?
So at this time, I don't think so. So supplies have been, I know that the building principals and the teachers have been distributing supplies. So we would, any supplies that they already have, we'd ask them to bring those in. And then we will fill in where we need to with supplies at school.
Okay.
Students will be required though to bring their Chromebooks or their iPads to school every day. That is something they will have to transport back and forth.
And they won't be sharing any supplies with the rest of the kids.
That is correct.
And what about bathroom trips? Are they gonna share bathroom with more from another classrooms? Are they gonna have their own bathroom?
So some of our classrooms for the younger students have bathrooms in them. Some of the classrooms without those bathroom breaks will be scheduled, and the bathrooms will be disinfected between classes that are using them.
Okay, because my daughter is in 2nd grade, so that's why I would like to know, like, if they're gonna be sharing bathrooms or if they're gonna have like their own for each classroom.
Exactly. So think of your daughter's 2nd grade classroom as her bubble, and that bubble will travel to the bathroom together to use it, but no other classroom will be in there at the same time. The bathroom would be disinfected after they leave, and then another classroom could use that restroom. If a student has an emergency and needs to use the restroom, we will have staff available to escort them to the bathroom. We don't want anyone feeling uncomfortable or having an accident, but the plan will be to take group breaks and have a disinfectant put in the bathroom prior to the next class using it.
Okay, and as far as I understood, if there is not more than 50% of the kids going back to school, are the kids who are the parents who decide to send their kids to school, are they gonna have more than 3 hours class, or is gonna still be 3 hours?
It would still be 3 hours, but it will allow us to have school every day for them instead of 2 days a week.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
And we have go ahead, your hand is up. Go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah. What happens like if you're what happens if you're late? Are they gonna still let you in the building?
Well, we would prefer that you not be late, but we understand that sometimes you might be running late. And yes, you'll be allowed in the building as long as you've completed the symptom screening checklist and you've had your temperature taken and you're not showing any symptoms of COVID-19.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Will this, okay, so pre-K I know obviously runs different than the rest. They'll be having their supplies, so they will not be on computers for anything. So will they be able to do like paperwork, or is that something that's not gonna be done because COVID?
So they will have their individual supplies, including any paperwork or any manipulatives or materials from their teacher within their own learning pod in the classrooms. They will not be sharing materials with other students, nor will they be simply on a tablet for the extent, like for the entire class period. So they'll be getting their own materials from the teacher that they will remain in their own learning pod with for the entire duration of the day.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't often get the opportunity to speak to so many parents at one time. So I'm going to take the opportunity to thank you for the wonderful job you've done partnering with our teachers, and thank those teachers who are out there listening tonight for the wonderful job you've done partnering with our parents to make the first 2 trimesters a success. Regardless the option you choose, we're going to do our best to provide the best and safest educational experience possible for your students. And we look forward to seeing all of you in person when we can. Hope that you will stay safe and be well and stay warm this time of year. And hope that we, again, have a chance to see each other in person sometime later this spring. You're on mute, Mr. B.
Every once in a while that happens, right? El superintendente quiere compartir con ustedes que su agradecimiento a su esfuerzo y repetir que estamos aquí para servir a la comunidad y darles la bienvenida a los estudiantes a la escuela de regreso cuando sea seguro para hacerlo. Y esto siempre es la meta, el objetivo es tener una experiencia amplia y una experiencia buena para sus estudiantes, pero tiene que ser, tenemos que estar seguros que la salud y de la comunidad y sus estudiantes, sus familias es enfrente de nosotros. Gracias por su esfuerzo en apoyar a sus estudiantes y también al personal. El superintendente quiere agradecer al personal que ha trabajado con ustedes durante todo este año.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to join us this evening.
Troy, do you want to share about the link, the survey?
Oh, yes, thank you for the reminder. So shortly after Mr. Berkovich and I end this town hall with you, Mr. Berkovich will be pushing out a text blast to you. It will have the link to the survey in both English and Spanish.
Justo después de la junta, yo voy a estar mandando a todos los padres por text, un mensaje de texto, un enlace para completar la encuesta. Si tenemos su información de su número de teléfono celular, va a recibir esta noche un enlace para la encuesta y también vamos a ponerlo en nuestro sitio de web.
We are asking that you fill out the survey, one survey for each student. It will help us to better organize the data. I know it's a little bit more time consuming, but it will, in the long run, I think help us with our data collection.
Estamos también pidiendo a los padres que llenen un formulario para cada estudiante. Está bastante breve, nada más hay 7 preguntas. Pero eso nos ayudará a estar organizados y más eficaz en el proceso de determinar cuándo y si podemos empezar la instrucción.
If for some reason you did not receive the text link tonight, you can go straight to our district website and access it. It's right on the front page. There's a big button on the front page you can press that'll take you right to the survey.
Si por alguna razón u otra no reciba el enlace por text, la encuesta está en nuestro sitio de web, está en la primera página, la página principal, y hay un enlace ahí y puede accesar la encuesta.
Again, thank you for joining us this evening. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Taking the time and answering all our questions. We really appreciate it. And let's hope for a safe back to school for the kids that do decide to go back Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you all. I hope you have a good rest of the evening and week to come. So have a good night. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Pasen buenas noches.
De nada.
Gracias.
Gracias por todo.
Nada,
Fueron muy
de nada.
inteligentes, por cierto.
Gracias.
De nada.
Thank you so much.
Gracias, buenas
Bye-bye.
noches.
You're welcome. You're welcome. De nada.
Gracias.
Buenas noches.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.